Hey guys, welcome back to Growing Pains. These next 2 episodes of Growing Pains are quite a unique story where we explore addiction, recovery, and the support of your family. Gavin Tait is someone who has really gone through every step of this journey, and today I speak with his brother Paul. This is the first of 2 episodes, and the whole thing emerged as I heard more about Gavin's story and the role that his brother played in this. So the next episode after this, you'll hear from Gavin himself, and this first one was a conversation with Paul where I wanted to get a bit more detail and a bit more background in relation to Gavin's journey and the roles that family members have played in that, because for many guests of the podcast, sometimes it can be quite challenging to tell your own story, and it's always important for me to do my research, and this conversation with Paul really opened up my eyes to some of the challenges that can be faced by the people around someone as they support them and help them through their addictions. So I wanted to share this as an episode in itself because I think it's a really valuable thing. Paul himself has gone through his own incredible journey of recovery, and we speak in this about the lessons he learned, his own journey, the challenging aspects to it, and how he is at a different part of that journey, no better or worse than his brother, but at a different stage in it, and how he's used the lessons learned to support his brother through his own challenging journey. After this one, if you jump into the next episode, you will hear from Gavin himself as he goes really deep into, well, just some life-changing stories and the depth that addiction and recovery can take, some of the steps he's gone through and where he's at now. There's a lot to take away from this one, and it really sets us up really well to hear Gavin's story. I'm very grateful to have spent time with Paul. It was a fantastic conversation, and I know you're going to enjoy it. Thank you for coming back to Growing Pains, and I will see you on the other side. Finally got each other. How you doing, my man?
Yeah, not too bad, buddy. How are you?
Oh, fantastic, my man. Thank you for reaching out, obviously in reference to Gavin.
No problem. I appreciate how busy you are, man. No problem at all.
Everybody's busy, mate. Your time is just as important as mine, and yeah, it's just a bit mad, crazy busy.
Correct, exactly. And then we've got the time difference and all that as well.
I think I messaged you at like midnight the other day. I can apologise for that, brother. I called it straight after. I was like, shit.
Don't worry. Hey, don't worry. My phone's on silent when I go to bed. Silent,
Good.
That's it.
You know what? I love that. That's controlling the controllables, because I have some people that get really upset when I'm like on the job or something like that, and I message them at a stupid time, and I'm like, put your phone on silent. You know what I mean? Don't give people the ability, because sleep is so important, so important.
100% correct. 100% correct.
How's life out there?
Yeah, good. Yeah, moving to Thailand changed my life, man. Really, really did. Moved out to Thailand and rediscovered the sport of Muay Thai, and that's kind of my new addiction. And I live here now, and I work from here. I work all over Asia in mining anyway, so I could be based anywhere in the world because I get flew to my work anyway. So
what initially made you want to move out there? What initially made you want to move? What gave you that trigger?
Oh, I grew up in Melton, and I left Melton, I suppose, when I was 21, went to Ireland, and I went there working in mining, got married there, got divorced. I was an addict as well, and got divorced because of my addiction, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And I wanted a fresh start. So I had friends that lived here that were involved in the fighting game, that worked in mining, but were also like ex-Muay Thai champions. Like one was a New Zealand champion, another guy was an Australian champion, but they worked also in mining because there's not big money in Muay Thai, you know.
Your dad was into mining, wasn't he? So that came from your dad. He was big in the sort of mining game and moving around and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But still, with all those benefits, though, what made you want to go? Because that's a massive move, mate. That's a huge commitment. I know you were used to like moving around a bit with the job, but just to think, you know what, fuck this, I'm going to uproot and I'm going to go. That's just huge.
I'll tell you exactly what happened. I was in between jobs, and a friend of mine was in between jobs also, a guy that we used to work together in Indonesia. Mm-hmm. And he says, Paul, come out to Thailand for a couple of weeks. He said, come out for a month. I said, look, I can't really, I'll come out for a couple of weeks. So I came out for a couple of weeks. It turned into a month. My visa was for a month, and I extended my visa for another month. Then when my visa was up, I flew home, spoke to my kids who were independent at the time. One's in university. One's living on her own with a boyfriend and got her own business.
Wow.
And I said, look, I'm thinking about moving to Thailand and selling the family home. How do you feel about that? And the girl said, do it. Wow. They were like happy out because they wanted to see their dad happy. You know, they'd seen him through his addiction and divorce and blah, blah, blah. They knew I was clean and sober. And I did it. So I came in for a 2-week holiday, stayed 2 months, went home, sold my house and came back.
That's a soundbite right there. I was here for 2 weeks, went home, sold my house, came back. I love it.
Yeah.
So how come the kids were so supportive of it? Because that could have gone two ways. I mean, imagine if they'd have said no.
If they'd have said no, I wouldn't have batted an eyelid. You know, I wouldn't have batted an eyelid. They were like, yeah, Dad, because like, you know, you've spent 2 months there and we've never seen you so happy. You know, there was a lot of AA meetings here. There was a lot of NA meetings here. And, you know, I was in contact with them every day, twice a day because they're my kids, you know. I always had a good relationship with my girls, 2 girls. And yeah, they were just so supportive of it. And obviously, I think they seen it as a brilliant way to get an awesome holiday 2 or 3 times a year. So
yeah, I suppose so.
They're so used to their dad. They're so used to They're so used to their dad working away for like 6 to 10 weeks at a time, then coming home for a month or two. So they said, well, how about every second break that you get from work, instead of you coming home, why don't we come to Thailand? I'm like, yeah, that'd be awesome.
That'd be great.
So my daughter came out, my youngest. Yeah, so my daughter now, she's into Muay Thai, and now she's fighting Muay Thai in Ireland. Like, she's at the standard of fighting now, and she only took it up at 19. She just took to it, and she was a natural. And the guys here, the Thai guys were saying, like, she's just a natural. She's got natural flow and ability, you know what I mean? She just needs some good coaching, and she stuck at it because she loved it. And she's sparring now, and she's at the level where she can start to fight if she wants to. But whether she chooses to do that's up to her.
That must be a great connection for the two of you to have as well.
Oh, it is, because last time I went to Ireland, like, I spar with her in the ring, you know, and obviously we don't hit each other for whack.
Of course,
it's just sparring. It's about just outwitting each other and getting them moving and stuff.
Yeah. I got that around my head when I first started doing a little bit of grappling last year, and they said, you know, sparring should be something realistically you should be able to do every day. It's like chess. Do you know what I mean? You should never be injured. You should never be worried about sparring with anybody if they're of sound mind and they're a consummate professional, because it's not about how big somebody is, how strong somebody is. It should be chess. And the same with rolling when you're doing, you know, grappling or something like that. You should be able to do it day in, day out. You shouldn't be going to you know, a submission where you hurt somebody. Do submissions.
Jiu-jitsu is a very tough sport. I've got a friend here who's a black belt, second dan in jiu-jitsu, an Italian guy that I've become really good friends with, and he's actually an ex-Muay Thai world champion, like 4-time world champion.
Jesus.
But he gave it up when he was like 28 and took up Muay Thai in his mid-40s. Now, great story as well. His mother was a heroin addict. He lived on the streets, blah, blah, blah. He's never taken a drink or a drug in his life. And martial arts saved his life, and he's an amazing guy. So he got me into the jiu-jitsu, but it's true. I end up getting injured too much, man. I love it.
It is a lot of joint manipulation, isn't it?
It's so painful, and it is probably the toughest sport I have ever done.
Yeah,
it's Muay Thai is nothing in comparison. Jiu-jitsu to me is way harder. Yeah. Whereas some of the jiu-jitsu boys would say, "Oh no, I'm not going to box with you sparring because you'll kill me." But that's not the way it is. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's so nice. It's good.
So take my mind back to you. Obviously, you're the brother, but you had your own challenges as well. Because I'll be honest with you, I was initially, you know, when I started to learn a little bit more about Gavin, I pictured you and I sort of framed you as, without blowing your ego up, the sort of hero. Do you know what I mean? The hero that's, I'm not saying that you haven't been, but you've sort of, I always say to people, your values come from your voids, and it looks like you valued what you had gone through, and that had created this drive to help your brother. But what was your initial struggles with, you say, drink and drug and addiction? And
my initial struggles were, I suppose it goes back to my mother. I mean, we lived in Astorville, and my mother was a chronic alcoholic, you know, so we both grew up around alcoholism and violence, and I hated alcohol at a young age. So I suppose I started doing drugs at the age of 14, 15. When I say drugs, like smoking a bit of weed and then ecstasy, LSD. And I hated alcohol. I never really drank till I was like 21, 22, because I hated it, because I seen what it did to my mother. My mother died at 46 from alcohol-related illness. And it was a relief to see my mother die. That's how bad she was.
Really?
And that's a horrible thing to say, but it was worse. Yeah, it's a horrible thing to say, but it's horrible to see someone sick. It's like I suppose
it feels horrible because
dying of cancer.
That's what I mean. Most people's relationship with their parents is a certain way, so they will hear that and they may think, oh, that's a horrible thing to say, but it's all relative because most people think of a parent as a lover, as a giver, as a provider, but to some people that's not how they identify that person because that person has never been that for them.
Correct, and it took me many years to realize that my mother was a very sick woman, you know. And so, cut a long story short, like I was quite bad on drugs. I was injecting amphetamine and stuff. The age of 18 it was, my father took me off mining down in Cornwall. And I kind of got my life a little bit back together and started earning a bit of money. But when that contract dried up, I went back to Melton and I had a bit of cash, started drug dealing, back to square one. And eventually got some work in Ireland 3 years later, fast-tracked it when I was 21, 22. He took me to Ireland and he said, that's it, Paul, I catch you with any drugs or fire, this is your last chance. And I put my head down at work and I really wanted to get away from Melton, you know, and get away from my...
How did it actually start for you? Sorry, I just want to take you back because I know I don't want to jump past that. Not that you were trying to, but so you'd said, full stop. I don't want to be involved in alcohol. I can see. Did your dad struggle with alcohol at all?
Not really. He was a drinker, but he wasn't a huge drinker. He was a very fit man. He was a big guy like yourself. Like my father's natural body weight would be about 18 stone. He'd run marathons and you know, he played senior first team rugby for Melton.
I know a few friends 46. That were knew your dad quite well, and they all speak highly of his commitment to the team and the club. And
he was a very fit guy. I mean, that fit. He never took us to a McDonald's. He never took us to a Burger King.
That's awesome.
He was. Me and my brother always thought that because of the way we were, this guy's going to outlive us, you know. And unfortunately, he didn't. But anyway, that's life. But so
how did you get introduced to so you said, I'm not taking alcohol, but you were, what was the trigger? Who introduced you to, you know, you say amphetamine, you say weed, what was it? Was it another a friend?
I think it was just all my friends. Yeah, my friends. It was like the done thing. We were all living in Assaby. I hung around with a crowd of people, you know, you probably know some of them. I won't mention any names, but anyway, you probably know some of them. And it's kind of the thing. It was like Melton was kicking off with the drug scene and the rave scene was just kicking off. And, you know, and because I didn't want to go home that often because my mum was always drunk. And if my father there was fighting, it was quite often my father would leave her because he wasn't an alcoholic. He'd like a drink, but he'd do his job at the mine at Assaby Mine, and he'd play his rugby at the weekends. He'd do his training in the week. And, you know, he was kind of a functioning... Yeah. So his way of dealing was just bury his head in the sand and bugger off, and we were left to kind of pick up the pieces with our mother, and it was easy to just stay away.
Do you ever wish that your dad had been there more? Do you ever think if your dad? Do you have any form of do you have any unbuilt up sort of not blame, but do you know what I mean? Do you ever feel like
resentment?
Dad, you just left us. You just left us to be. You knew what Mum was like, and you just left us with her.
Yeah, I used to have until I went through rehab myself.
Yeah.
And I used to have, and then when I learned about my father's upbringing and what he went through, and at the time he probably just did what he thought was best for his situation, you know. So yeah, I did hold a bit of a resentment, but today I don't, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like I used to hold a resentment towards my mother for not being there because she was just constantly drunk. But today I don't, because I've forgiven them, because I've learned to forgive, if you know what I mean.
It's so
powerful. And I can't change the past.
And it's not just for them as well, it's for you. Do you think your dad sort of learned domestic violence from a younger age then? Not necessarily from him, but was it more of a cultural thing? Like you said, he just thought, oh, that's just the way it is. This is a marriage. This is what we do. Yeah,
that 100% for sure. He had a very rough upbringing. He was brought up in a Catholic home for homeless children, because he was taken away from his mother at a young age, and he was abused sexually and physically at a very young age. So he had a big hatred for the Catholic Church, and a huge hatred. He wouldn't even go to a wedding or a church because he wouldn't step foot in a church because he was abused as a child, you know.
Wow.
And
and then, like you say,
he wasn't a violent man, really. You know, my mother was the more violent one. He'd defend himself against my mom. And yeah, he'd beat her up a few times.
Yeah.
And I'm not condoning that, but 9 times out of 10, it was her trying to beat the shit out of him.
And you know what? When I was saying earlier about that, the whole the voids make your values thing, I would imagine, I'm just guessing now, and you'll know far better than I will, that it sounds like obviously he had no families when he grew up. So when he finally started building one himself, it was like, look, whatever it is, I'm going to keep it forever. I'm going to stay with my wife. I'm going to, whatever the situation, because I never had that, and I need to make it, however it works. We talk about functioning alcoholic. We can talk about functioning family, even though it's dysfunctional. And he was like, I'm not going to give up on it, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, even before I was born, the whole thing was destined to be dysfunctional. My mother came from a dysfunctional background. My father came from a dysfunctional background. You know what I mean? And I don't hold any resentment towards any of them. If anything, I hold a bit of resentment towards myself, because I could, if I'd have known today what I know now, if I'd have known then, I could have got my mum some professional help,
Yeah.
But anyway, I didn't, and I can't change the past, because I understand today that addiction is an illness, and a lot of people don't agree with that. A lot of people say, no, it's a choice. And I don't think people choose to ruin their life and uncontrollably, where they can't stop drinking or they can't stop taking drugs. No. And yes, it starts with a choice. I agree with that. And I agree it starts with a choice.
I think it starts with a choice, but I also believe that, like you've just alluded to there, addiction for me, because I know I've got an addictive personality, and when you're so young, whichever direction you get pointed down, that's where your addiction goes. So now, perhaps, and you may not like the term addiction, but I feel quite comfortable in using it, because like if an artist is very passionate, we call it passion. We don't say they're addicted to painting. We don't say somebody's addicted to playing the violin. But to me, it's the same energy form. It's the same form of power. It just depends what you apply it to.
Correct. I totally agree with you. Like, I am addicted to Muay Thai.
There you go.
There is no doubt about it.
And that's a healthy addiction. But I feel like if I don't look at what funnel I'm pouring that into, it's like a massive wave of energy. It's like a rapids. It's like if I try and hold it back like a dam, or if I think of it like a balloon that I'm trying to push down into the water, if I try and push it down and deny it, it's going to blow up. It's going to splash everyone. It's going to hurt somebody. And it's important for me to be aware of that, and me to give it a healthy outlet. So for me, it might be weightlifting, podcasting, fire service. I do so many different things because I know I'm an addict. I know I am. I know I need to keep healthy things in my mind. Otherwise, the devil will come and find me.
Yeah, I'm the same at work. Like my addictive personality comes out at work. It's everything has to be 100 miles an hour. I'm always busy. I've got that addictive. I'll always be an addict. It depends on how I channel it, like you just pointed out.
But that's so powerful.
And now I channel, and because I've accepted it, and I know, like I'm quite addicted to going to AA meetings. I like going and helping other. Like, my story might help someone else out. You know what I mean? Or I often go and hear someone else's story that helps me out.
Yeah,
and it makes me feel normal. It doesn't make me feel. It doesn't make me feel like I'm any different to like. Yeah. I have a thing called I'm an addict, and at the end of the day, I accept it, and I'm going to live with it. But I've got to be careful what I do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And also it gives you perspective. Do you know what I mean? You're able to see where they are, and you're no better or worse than them, but you can see how far sometimes you've come and appreciate that. Yeah. And then, because it's hard sometimes, we're always looking forwards, we're always setting goals, which is healthy. But, as soon as we achieve a goal, we can be forgiven for immediately not forgetting it, but not necessarily acknowledging how challenging it was. Because the person you are right now is the person that for a long time you had the ambition to become, and you've become that person now. So it's important to acknowledge it, and then also set new challenging goals to keep that addiction pointed into healthy outlets.
100% agree. Yeah.
So as you started growing up,
I think we're on the same sort of page.
Yeah, you moved out to Ireland when you were 21. What was happening with Gavin at this time?
Yeah. So Gavin at that time had a girlfriend, Ruth, who eventually married, and I knew he was taking drugs, and I thought he was just going through the same sort of stuff as me. But my parents see I was probably worse than Gavin at that stage. Gavin would have been 17 at that stage. I'm 4 years older than him. So so I kind of detached from Gavin and my mother quite a bit when I moved out to Ireland, because my father then stayed in Ireland. So I stayed in Ireland also because I was working there. I met a girl. And at that time, I knew Gavin was taking drugs. I'd stay in touch with him. I'd hear from his friends. Yeah. But I didn't realize to the extent of how bad it was. I didn't know that he was into heroin. I didn't know that. I'd heard heroin had hit Melon. Yeah, I kind of it was there when I was there, but it was only just coming into Melton. You know, heroin was the thing that maybe they did in London or Birmingham, and you know, it wasn't really prevalent in Melton at the time. Although it was just phasing in when I left, and I didn't realize how bad his addiction was. But I suppose when I was in Ireland, like, you know, he'd met a girl, and I remember him quitting smoking. We'd communicate on the telephone now and again, but we wouldn't see each other that often.
No.
But when we did, if he came over to Ireland or whatever, it would all be drinking. And like, I would drink to oblivion and he would drink to oblivion and get up and drink the next day. And I think, fuck, this guy has a problem the same as myself.
Yeah.
So we kind of detached for quite a long time. And especially after my mother died, I just got on with my own life. I had my own family and my own issues. It was really when my father died that I realized how bad Gavin was.
Yeah.
Because I had flown back to Melton a few times because his wife said, look, he's really bad for us. Yeah. And I tried to get him into rehab, or I tried to get him into meetings, and I tried many, many times. And many times I gave up and I let it go for 6 or 7 months because I couldn't get hold of him.
So when your mum died,
eventually,
is your dad still living out with you and traveling with you, or did he go back home? We were both living in Ireland at the time. So Gavin was on his own.
We both went back to. Gavin was on his own, so we went back. I would say only for a couple of weeks, and then obviously I went back to Ireland to work. My father came back to Ireland also to work. But my father would frequently travel back to Ireland to see Gavin. Yeah. Because Gavin was living in my mother's house at the time, which therefore became my dad's because they were still married. They weren't legally divorced. Yeah. And that's when Gavin really started to fall apart, I think. And then when my father died, it was like even worse, you know. Okay. But addiction is addiction. And in my thinking on it is whether something good or bad happened, I think Gavin may have still gone down the same path. Okay. But if you go back to the upbringing that we had, you know, that definitely had an impact on it as well. You know, our values, our morals. Do you think
if the roles were reversed, do you think if Gavin had been the older brother, do you think you could have very possibly taken a similar path to him?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think I'm no different. I think my addiction is no different. I think. Actually, good question. Let me think about this for a minute.
Yeah, think about it, brother. No rush.
A lot of my friends said it was the best. Like my close friends that I used to take drugs with in Melton said, Paul, it was the best thing you ever did to get out of Melton, because if you'd have still been here, you'd have been like the rest of the smackers. That was their opinion of me. Yeah. But my opinion of myself is, well, I got out of Melton because I wanted to, and I worked very hard at my job. I actually became my father's boss within 4 years of mining. Wow. And I left school at 15. I didn't have a degree. I had to have a degree for the position I was given. So I was quite driven. It's like you said, I have that addictive personality, and I love mining. So I really, really focused on my job. And yeah, I was still in active addiction, but I was functioning addict. And I progressed very, very fast. And I was in senior management by the time I was 23, 24. Wow. And that's very young in mining. And I've been in a senior management position ever since. Yeah. So, you know, I have fallen off the rails a couple of times. I've been in a couple of rehabs since that, but got back up and I'm in the longest stint of sobriety I've ever had, which is 21 months. And
that's incredible, man.
Hopefully it stays like that.
Congratulations. Yeah. Tell me when you first thought that, well, obviously you tried several times to go back and help Gavin, but this whole, you moved to Thailand, you'd come back to the UK, you'd soldier home. When you told Gavin, look, I'm going to Thailand, or were you even in connection with him anymore? Did you even see him or talk to him?
No. So even prior to me moving to Thailand, I tried relentlessly many times, to the point where I couldn't sleep for weeks on end trying to get hold of him. I had friends looking for him. I had friends reporting back that he was in trouble, and I was trying my best. I was trying to get hold of his drug counselor, which I used to talk to in Melton, to see can we get him into a rehab? Can we get him to rehab? How much will a private rehab cost? Because I earned quite a bit of money and I had enough money to do it. Yeah. And Gavin wouldn't have any of it. So I went through stints like that for many years, and I can't tell you exactly what the years were. Yeah. But when I came to Thailand, And my life changed. After 3 rehabs, I actually got, I got a real glimpse of true sobriety and such a beautiful life in what I found in Thailand.
Yeah.
I said, I've got to get him out here. I looked into some rehab centers around. There was a great AA community here. There's a great NA community here of expats. And I thought, I've got to get him out here. I just have to. I woke up one morning and I made it my mission. I got friends. I rang as many friends as I could. We tricked him nearly into getting on an airplane.
Really?
He had no real choice.
So how did that
it was
work?
basically tricking it.
Who were you in contact with in the UK? I mean, you don't have to name names or whatever if you don't want to. But was it?
Yeah, a very close friend of mine, Chris Mann. You probably heard of his name. Chris Mann. Chris. He lives in Leicester now. And he helped immensely. An ex-girlfriend of mine, Anna Marie Cole, who has her own addiction problems still, but that's not for me to judge. But she helped him also as well. She went round to his house. And between the two of them, I booked a ticket and they coaxed him into it, and they made sure, because we were all worried that he wasn't going to get on the plane. They drove him to the airport and they were feeding him drink, and they made sure he had his medication, because I didn't expect him to stop drinking. I even sent money across so he could drink on the airplane.
Wow.
Because he had nothing, no money.
Where did he think he was going? Because I know he couldn't.
He was that. He knew he was going to Thailand, but he didn't really know for what.
So you just told him that you're just coming for a visit, or you're just coming out to see?
Yeah, I told him I wanted him to come here and get sober, but I don't think he fully comprehended what was ahead of him.
Yeah,
and then and I knew that he couldn't just stop drinking because he was that bad from the stories that I've been told. Yeah. And I'd got some advice here from the people in rehab. They didn't even interview him or anything, which normally is the process. They'll interview before they let you in.
Yeah.
But I did all that. I just got him here. I got him here, and even when I collected him at the airport, I had cans of beer in the fridge. I had fucking diazepam tablets or whatever. I can't remember, Xanax or whatever, because I knew he was a heroin addict, and I knew if he stopped, it could kill him.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. I think a lot of people don't understand that, and I don't pretend to understand it fully, but there are a couple of drugs out there that you can't just give up on willpower. If you stop taking it, you can die. The body becomes fully dependent.
Oh, yeah, correct. Your body will go in complete shock, and it can kill you, cardiac arrest or whatever. I don't know the ins and outs of it. I was just told, like, I never did heroin. I did every other drug under the sun, but I never did heroin.
Yeah. But
I was told he needed it. And I took him straight to the hospital here to make sure that he got his prescription that was needed before he went into rehab. And then I think I spent about 3 days with him, and I let him drink, and I let him drink, and I let him drink. I wasn't going to try and stop him.
Yeah.
And I said, right, today, Gav, is your last drink. And he had a bottle of beer driving all the way to the rehab, and then he finished it in the car and sat in the car park of the rehab and finished his drink and went in. Generally, they don't let you in if you've had a drink. You're meant to be sober, and they knew the circumstances, and they let him in, and he struggled, and he did struggle.
What was that final conversation like? So when you sat in the car park and he's going to go in, and he must have been starting to think like, Jesus Christ, what's this for? Paul, what are we doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing, mate?
Oh, he certainly didn't really want to do it. He certainly didn't really want to do it. And I suppose I was thinking, and what I've been taught in many years of in and out of rehabs, and I had a lot more years of rehab knowledge and AA knowledge than he had, or NA knowledge, that if someone doesn't really want it, they're not going to get it.
Yeah, that's
but
it.
I was adamant that he's going to go, and I was adamant that he's going to stay there as long as it takes for him to get it, because if not, he's going to die. But let me backtrack a little bit. The conversation in the car was it was a bit tough and a little bit emotional for me as well, because I'd written my brother off for many years. I'm not going to lie, I had a savings account put aside to him for his funeral, because when my father died, it was only me that could pay for the funeral, and I was the only one that had any money. I was the only one that was working. I was supporting his child as well, and while he was off doing his drugs, and supporting his wife and sorting out all his bullshit, all his fines that he had, and all the court cases that he had for not paying social maintenance, and
Jesus Christ.
So I had got to the point where I said, like, it is what it is. It's going to cost me around 7,000-8,000 euros, because I was working in euros, for Gav's funeral, because he was going to die.
Yeah,
but when I really got the notion,
and you were just waiting for the phone call.
Correct. I was just waiting for the phone call. Exactly. The same as what I was with my mother, and I knew it was going to happen as well. But what really changed me and give me the drive and determination to get him is when I came to Thailand, and I started getting this feeling of I have to do. I woke up one morning and I have to, or he's going to die. And I hadn't been in touch with him for months. I just woke up one morning, and I'd been doing a lot of AA meetings, spent a lot of time with addicts. And I just thought, I have to. There's a beautiful world out here. There's a beautiful life for him if he puts in the work. And yeah, it cost me a shitload of money and a serious amount of money out, my pension money, to do it all. But you can't put a value on life either. You know what I mean?
It's incredible. It's really powerful, my man.
Yeah, I just did what I thought was right. And what was the right thing to do for him. We still don't get on that well. We still don't see eye to eye. You know, there's a lot of resentment there between us both. And for many things that may take years to iron out, and I sometimes I don't think I've wasted my money on getting him sober. I'm so grateful that he's sober, but it's certainly time for him now to start to go and rebuild his life back in the UK. Certainly not in Melton. He needs to go to a sober house in London, which we have lined up. Get him back into society, get him back working, let him face a couple of court cases start going on, the face, and that's the next step where I'm trying to get him to, because Pattaya in Thailand is not the right place for him to be hanging around. He's done his rehab. He spent, I don't know how much, like 15 months or whatever it was, I can't remember, in a sober house. He's no longer in the sober house now. He's living with me now. And I'm a little bit concerned that, you know, he's meeting up with girls and he has to meet up with the wrong girl, and before he knows it, he's happy out, and then next thing he's having a drink or he's taking a smoke of a pipe. There's a lot of drugs around here also.
Is there?
So I want to get him out of it. Yeah. I want to get him back to the UK into a sober house and take the next step, because he's got a child that he's got to be responsible for too, you know. And I want him to be a father.
Absolutely.
But he's got to want that himself also, and he says he does.
It, yeah. So it's got to come from him now. It's got to come. That next big step is his.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I understand his fear. There's a lot of fear there, and I understand that. But as I said to him, Gavin, there was a lot of fear coming here. And I said, what's ended up happening is, Paul, I've got to lack beyond my wildest dreams. I said, so face your fears, because take it head on.
Yeah. Everything
will work out fine if you do the right thing. And when I say by doing the right thing, all you've got to do is not pick up a drink or a drug, and stay grounded with AA and NA, and surround your people with them. Surround yourself within that sort of community, and you will be 100% fine. Because I've got great faith. He's a good craftsman. He's very good with his hands. He's like my father. He can weld. He can carpentry, housework. Like, I'm the opposite. I'm management. I sit in an office and tell what people what to do. This guy, Gavin, is gifted with his hands. He can, you know, he can do anything. He's gifted.
I love what you say about the value of association as well, because I know that effectively is, for me, it's like the golden rule. It's what I speak to people so much about, the sort of clients that I coach, and you see it in so many things in life. You know what I mean? I'm not a religious person, but you see it in religion, you see it in AA, you see it in, you know, professional athletes, you see it in, you know, high level business people as well. It's all about the people.
Correct.
That you place yourself around, and I've seen so many people have that ignorant mindset, with all due respect, where they're like, no, you know, I don't let that person get to me, or, you know, I'm not affected by that, I'm not affected by this. I'm like, it's not a fucking competition. It's not, are you man enough to take it? Stop placing yourself around them. Don't place yourself around somebody and go, oh, it's not it is. It's going in. It's going in your mind. It's bleeding into your ears. It's permeating itself into your behaviors, your habits.
Correctly, subconsciously, it is getting into you.
I mean, it's a multi-billion pound market. It's how marketing works. It's multi-billion pound. It's all subliminal.
Correct.
It's all going in there. You know, this is not the people have put a lot of money into this because it works, and it works in the same way for good and for bad.
Correct. So there's a brilliant saying in AA which I love, and I'd be more AA than NA. I mean, I'm an addict. Addiction is addiction to me, but I relate more to the alcoholic side of things, I suppose. But there's a great saying in both AA and NA and CA, whichever one you choose: people, places, and things. So you have to be aware of people, places, and things. Like, I don't hang around with the so-called gangster hard boys that I used to hang around with. You know, I go to a gym, I hang around with healthy guys. I hang around with guys that, you know, we train together. We'll go to the beach, have a bit of fun, Some of my friends, they drink, but the moderate drinkers, we don't go out partying. And, even though I live in the biggest party capital in Asia, don't get me wrong, we'll go to a go-go bar now and again just for a bit of fun and see some of the girls because we're human beings at the end of the day.
Of course we are. We've got those at the end of those. 100%.
Yeah. But it is. It's people, places, and things, and that's what I'm trying to explain to Gavin when he goes back. Like he's nearly got 20 months sobriety, or 19 months sobriety. He needs to go back, and he needs another 2 years at least in a sober house because he was that bad. It takes so many years to get yourself to that stage. Like he's been in addiction probably from 13, 14, 15 up to the age of 39, 40. Like he's not going to be fixed in 2 years, and I appreciate that, and he needs to understand that to change his thinking and his whole way of life. He's got to surround himself with the people that are recovered with, and that's people that are in recovery.
But it's,
and if you do that or choose
like that, it's even deeper than that, because when you talk about people, places, and things, I hear, I know these are all psychology terms, stuff like that, but I hear anchors and stuff like that, because it's also not just the people you're around or the places that you go to, but the things. People might hear things and they'll go, what do you mean things? Well, these are anchors, these are items, these are songs, these are pieces of clothing, these are types of weather. Do you know what I mean? There can be anything where people go, oh yeah, when it rains I'm like this, or when I see that person it's like this, and people will get it most. I think the easy way to people understand it sometimes is when somebody dies. When somebody dies, it's then it's people, places, and things. You see it again because when you see, let's say, when your best friend dies, when you see your other best friend, immediately you'll get a trigger back to whoever, Kev. Do you know what I mean? When Kev died, and you'll see that, and then you might see his car, or you might see the place that you went to with him, or you know what I mean? And all of these things, when you think you're past it, or when you think you're over it, closure, most in terms of it all triggers, and you can leap back and forth, you can feel like you're past it, and then a trigger comes, it might be a people, a place, a thing, and straight 100. Away, you just break into tears, you just don't know why it happens, and it's those things, it's self-awareness at that point.
It's very powerful stuff, and you're right, I mean, it's triggers is the thing, and especially for an addict.
The what isn't always the damaging part, it's the why. Why are you doing it? If you know why you're doing it, then you can still stay in control. You can put yourself, if you choose to, and if you have to sometimes, because sometimes we can't control our environments, and we will be placed with a situation, with an environment, with something placed in front of us, and then we have to have such a firm why. Why am I there? Why have 100%. I chosen these things? And that is what pull you through those moments where you are confronted with somebody you didn't realize took drugs, and perhaps drugs arrives in your life in some sort of environment, and you have to know undoubtedly that your why is gonna stay firm.
Yeah, well, you're 100% again. Like I very rarely go to bars, and if I do, it's to socialize with friends. But I know I set myself a limit, right? I'll go for an hour and a half, then I'm going. Because not that I want to drink, but I don't want to put myself in that environment again, because and it's not that I don't trust myself. So I just don't, that's not my environment anymore, if you know what I mean. I've chosen a different environment. Yeah. And so I'm it's like the old saying that they say, I have a sponsor, obviously a lot of people in AA or NA that have a sponsor. If you go and sit in a barber shop long enough, you're going to get a haircut.
You're going to get a haircut.
We're going to sit in a bar long enough and I make it. Yeah. So, and it's a great saying that my sponsor has, because I tell him that I go to bars and stuff. And he's a little bit wary, and he's right. And I have to be wary. Not that I want to drink, and I don't want to drink when I'm in there, but I get to a point where I start to feel uncomfortable when I see people that are drunk.
Yes.
It gets annoying. I don't like it. It's not me anymore. No. Then I leave. So I have to. So I do go there for the why. The why is to have a bit of fun with my friends. They're not big drinkers. They don't get hammered, and they don't fall around the place like I used to.
Yeah.
They're all athletes. They're all into the training, jiu-jitsu guys, or Muay Thai guys, or karate guys. That's the kind of people I hang around with now. But yeah, they have the option to drink. And yeah, we'll go to a go-go bar just to check out the chicks and have a bit of fun. But that's like once every couple of months. That's it.
Some people as well, because I want the people that are going to listen to what we say as well to really realize that this isn't just people like, oh yeah, I get it, but that's only for alcoholics. That's only for. It's not. It's exact. I talked to one of the women that I have that works with me, and hers is just a simple fat loss goal. We're not going to go into detail about it, but she says things like, oh, one of my young daughters, she likes to do baking, and I'm like, right, okay. She says, but I can't bake with her now because obviously I'm trying to lose fat. I said, of course you can bake. Of course you can bake. You spend time with your family. Says, why are you doing it? You just need to know the why. She says, well, I want to be able to do something with my daughter. I said, then bake. Bake, you know what I mean? Enjoy yourself.
Exactly,
even have half a cupcake if you want to, and eat it with her. I'll say, let's share it, and let's share it and that sort of stuff. The problem is, 11 o'clock at night when your daughter's in bed, you're downstairs raiding the fridge. If you see yourself at that point, then, well, that's not the why anymore, is it? Because the why was we were going to connect with our family. Like for you, I don't want to go to a pub, but I want to socialize with my friends. So I can do the why, and then when the why changes, that's when I need to leave. And that's what I say to them is you can apply this. I want people to know that these applications, whilst taken to the extreme in the environments of what we so-call addiction, are not specifically about that. These are behavioral traits that I think now more than ever in the world of social media and noise and anxiety and depression and addiction, people need to not isolate these principles to the world of addiction because they're applicable and useful to everybody.
I totally agree. It's applicable in nearly everything that we do in our life.
And 100%. I love that, like, once you see that, I'm sure you can apply it to so many areas of your life. You've learned these tools, and now you're like, oh, crikey, I'm going to use these tools over here with my relationships. I'm going to use them there with my work. And it empowers you so much.
Yeah. So the company I went back working with last year is a company that fired me 3 years ago for drinking. I drank myself like that bad once in Papua New Guinea, of all places, that I ended up in a hospital. And believe me, being in the hospital in Papua New Guinea is not nice. And they still kept me unemployed. And then I went off the rails again. And I started to realize, hang on a minute, I'm just like my mother. I'm drinking and I don't know when to stop, and I can't stop. I don't even remember the first drink, and I might wake up a week later. So they fired me eventually, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, they'd heard through the grapevine that, I'd sorted myself out, wasn't looking for a job. And they called me and said, Paul, we've got a job for you in Kazakhstan. Will you come out as a project manager? I said, project manager? I said, are you sure? I said, and he said, yeah, well, yeah. And he said, how are you doing with your drinking? I've heard a lot of good things, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, I haven't drank, and I'm doing my AA meetings and stuff. And he says, that's awesome. And I went out to Kazakhstan and it's just amazing how my life's changed. That before, when I was drinking, I was hiding or thinking I was hiding it and lying all the time. You become selfish, self-centered, you lie, you become dishonest. But now I have a boss that knows about my whole addiction, my whole life. And he knows, like, when I'm in Kazakhstan running a job for him, he's ringing me from Australia. Did you get your AA meeting in this week, Paul? And then he'll talk about how's production going, how's the money side of things going, and that's just amazing. I would not have dreamed that my life and addiction would turn out to what it is today.
Because what? I want people to know as well that when people have gone through an addiction, a little bit like when some people hire ex-military personnel, look, if somebody has been through an addiction, it shouldn't be a charity case where you're like, oh, I'll give them a job because they've been through something difficult. Look, if somebody's got on top of their addiction and they've truly got on top of it, they are the best investment for you to ever make. Because they are so 100%. Powerful. If they are aware of their addiction and they are on track with their recovery, then, oh my God, you are not going to find a better employee.
Well, I think my addiction made me good at my job in my first place because I was addicted to it.
Yeah.
When everyone else was going, fuck this, I'm going home, I was putting the extra bit in, and that was my addictive personality. But unfortunately, I was in active addiction at the time. Now, the point I was trying to make in Kazakhstan, my boss actually couldn't believe the change in me. He knew I'd stopped drinking, and he just says, the way you treat people, the way you are in meetings, because a lot of Zoom meetings, he'd been on Zoom meetings from Australia. He's based out of Australia. And he's like, Paul, you've just transformed. You're like this, you're like the old Paul, just better.
Yeah.
Because I've applied them tools of what I've learned through rehab and AA and being sober, I suppose, into all walks of life. My relationships, being honest at work, not lying. You know what I'm saying? When you're in addiction, you become a compulsive liar.
Oh, mate.
You lie that much, you don't even know. I could
stare you in the eye and just lie like that, and it was just never a problem, and you just got so good at it, and it was just easy. But then you also got to the worser point where, and I was like, when I get caught out, I don't even care. Do you know what I mean? And I'd be like, yeah, I know you caught me. So what? And I would just stare you in the face and lie again. I didn't care.
Yeah, very much the same. Yeah.
I'm going to get on the phone with Gavin tomorrow. I may or may not choose to sort of play him a small part of our conversation.
Whatever you want to do, to be honest, whatever you want to do, because at the end of the day, if it can help someone, and I think this is going to help Gavin and his confidence as well, because hitting the rock bottom that he's hit is taking a lot. He's getting his confidence back, but it's going to. I think this whole process of you spending some time with him and talking with him is really put a bit of a pep in his step, and use whatever you want. I have no issue. I have nothing to hide. I have nothing to be embarrassed about.
Wonderful.
I have no issue with anything. Nothing at all.
Really appreciate that, mate. And also, when you speak about this goal for Gavin to hopefully rebuild his life in the UK, this may act as another supportive stepping stone when people get to hear from him.
100%.
How his life is rebuilt, and that will, I'm no doubt in my mind, it will trigger a flood of acknowledgement from the people of his past and hopefully of his future.
Oh, for sure. I've been inundated with messages from his friends, but some of them I don't even know, like saying, Paul, thank you so much for what you've done for Gavin, what you've done for Gavin. I didn't really do much for Gavin apart from pointing him in the right direction. Gavin had to put the work in to get himself better.
100%.
Because no one can make you better. No, you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. And yes, he was fortunate he had a brother that had the money to do what he did. But taking that out of it, he still had to put that work in. Absolutely. Because as I know, it's not easy. And I've never been on heroin, and people tell me heroin's a lot harder than alcohol and a lot of other drugs that
it's not a competition. Everyone has their demons and everyone has their
exactly. But what I'm trying to say is that there's so many people that have had messages from that are like, wow, Gavin's story is amazing. I didn't actually realize how bad he was. I just had a really gut feeling one morning. I tried for many, many years. I've given up, given up. And then I had, my sponsor calls it, Paul, you had a revelation that you had to do it. And I did. I was, even if I had to fly back to England, I was going to fly back to England and I was going to put him on a fucking airplane. And if I had to get some heavies, I had some heavy boys lined up to do it as well. I had some nasty people in Melbourne because I still had connections. They were going to go around, and if we had to give him a bit of a hiding to do it, he was getting a hiding and he was coming on an airplane. Simple as that. And I don't mind to sound a bit rough around the edges, but that's how adamant I was.
That's reality. Yeah, and to be honest, that's where a lot of people probably fail in this day and age. They try the softly approach, and they don't have a realistic concept of where that person is and how much they are not going to respond to anything less than a really powerful intervention with that person, with that situation.
100%. The plan B was he was getting a hiding. The plan C, I was coming to get him as well. Yeah. So he was coming to Thailand whether he liked it or not. And he was coming. And he had every excuse under the sun not to come. I can't because of this. I can't because of that. I can't because I've got to get my medication every day. I get your medication here. Get enough medication for the flight. I sent my friend money to give him money. So I had enough beer cans so he could drink in the airport, so he could drink on the plane before he got on the airplane. Because I knew if I didn't, I wouldn't get him here.
But like you say, it all started with that small decision when you woke up and you just thought, I need to do this. And I hope that when people hear that, they know that. Because I've had it one or two times in my life, and I'm not in any way, shape or form going to pretend that it required the same level of effort and commitment that you've shown to your brother. But people that I've connected with that I've not spoken to in quite some time, and I just thought, I don't know, you just feel this. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the universe trying to pull people in the same direction. But I'd message somebody and then started spending time with them, started coaching them, whatever. And then a month later, I've had people say, hey, the day you rang me, I feel a bit ashamed to tell you, but I tried to kill myself 2 days earlier. And you think, Jesus Christ, you don't realize. And like you said, you didn't realize the place. You knew Gavin was in a bad place, but you didn't know how bad. But if you hadn't at least have tried, and then and then the cost, and then the time, and then the mental and emotional effort you were going to have to put in was probably far more than you had initially anticipated. But it all started with that small decision.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I wouldn't even call it a small revelation. To me, it was like, it's a bit like your conversation where you said, look, your friend said, look, that day you called me, it's like I was going to kill myself. To me, it was a moment like that. It's like higher power shit. I don't know. I'm not a religious guy either. I don't go to church. I don't believe in God. But something made me do what I did. It's like coming to Thailand to get sober. Something brought me here, and I ultimately believe I came to Thailand to get sober, and Pattaya of all places. Like, who the fuck comes to Pattaya to get sober? I came here and got sober. Like, what? Yeah. If that's not a miracle, I don't know what is.
Do you know what though? You know what that says so much though, because you've gone to a place where it could have gotten worse, but the main things you changed, it echoes back to it. It echoes people, places, and things. That's exactly what we're talking about again.
Yeah.
The place, the place is important, but you know it could have happened anywhere, and it could have gone there and got worse. Yeah. So you went there, and even in that situation, you were able to make that change.
Yeah, I shared it. I was at an AA meeting today, and I was just so happy. I finished training. I always feel good after training. I know I did like 8 or 9 rounds of boxing this morning. Well, I call it boxing Muay Thai. And I had a shower. I went to an AA meeting, and I just shared of how bewildered I was. How did I end up in Thailand sober? A Pattaya of all places, because I was the sort of addict that, like, I traveled a lot, Hong Kong, Singapore. I would go off on binges and party and girls and, you know, and I came to Pattaya, which is known. You can do whatever you want in this town, mate, as you probably heard. Yeah. I don't know whether you've been to Pattaya or heard of Pattaya, but you can do what you want here. You can get what you want here. This is like the party central of the world outside of Las Vegas, in my opinion.
Wow.
And I came here and got sober, and to me, that's higher power stuff. I don't know why, I don't know how, but it happened.
And you gave that gift to your brother.
I had to. I woke up one morning and I had to. I didn't want to. I had to. It was going to happen. One way or another, he was coming.
Love it. Paul, thank you so much for your time today, mate. And obviously, I'll get in conversation with Gavin tomorrow, and hopefully we can touch point at some point in the future, mate.
Yeah, and just on my behalf, thanks so much for reaching out to Gavin. You're probably helping him 20 times more than you think with his confidence. And I think the work that you're doing is amazing. So it really is. You seem to have a great understanding of addiction, and
I have a limited understanding. A great I'm always trying to learn, and this is where I have the addiction to learn.
You have good psychology.
Yes, yeah.
You have good psychology. You have a great understanding of. I'll make it simple as possible. You're a very logical, common sense guy, and common sense is not very common.
That seems to be one of the things that we're lacking these days. But ultimately for me, I struggled a lot with ego and stuff in the past. And one of the biggest powerful things I feel I have now is I know, and I've got it tattooed on my arm, I'm better than no one. Nobody's better than me. Everyone is my teacher, and everybody can be my student as well. I'm always addicted to learning now, and I want to use that. And every time I pick up a new shiny coin, if you will, in a metaphorical sense of learning, I'm so excited to try and give that coin to somebody else in the hope that it can hold more value for them than perhaps it has for me, or at least enrich their life in some way.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is amazing, and the what you have tattooed on your arm is basically a very similar slogan in NA and rehab centers. Not exactly to that word, because we are nobody. You know what I mean? We are, like, in addiction, you're full of ego. You're better than everyone else, and everyone else is wrong, and you're right. And when you lose, you deal with your humility and ego, which I learned very fast, especially in Muay Thai gyms when there was 60-kilo guys knocking the shit out of me. You learn to leave your ego at the door. You know what I mean? And then they beat the shit out of you, and then hug you and say thank you. And I'm like, what the fuck is this all about?
Yeah, I fucking hate you now. I'm going to go outside and get a tool out the van or something. You're not sure what to do because it's such a different mindset.
Yeah, but now I'm like you. I struggle with my ego. I don't anymore. I'm no better or any worse than anyone else, And if I can help someone, I try and help someone, especially in addiction, because I know how bad addiction is. I've lived through it. My whole family's lived through it, and my extended family in Scotland. I've got major issues with heroin, and so
I look forward to spending time with you at some point in the future, my man. Stay safe, all right?
Yeah, thanks very much, and I appreciate everything you've done. Thank you.
See you soon, brother. Bye-bye. Well, there you have it, guys. That is a brother's love right there. We heard so many things about Paul's own story, as well as setting us up wonderfully to hear from Gavin. I had a conversation with Gavin the very next day, and the next episode on Growing Pains you will hear from Gavin, and it is an absolute mind blower. You don't want to miss it. Thank you so much for coming back to Growing Pains, and thank you again to Paul for taking time out of his busy life to spend that valuable conversation with me. I know there'll be lots of takeaways from people. If you've been affected by anything in today's podcast, please don't hesitate to reach out to ourselves, to Paul, reach out to Turning Point, reach out to some of the wonderful free services that support addicts in recovery, both in the UK and across the world. Don't suffer in silence. It's okay not to be okay. And I thank you for listening. I thank you for spending time here with us. And I will see you next time on Growing Pains.